Hello, Star Citizens. And before I get into anything, take a look at this.
I assumed that the Aegis Hammerhead would be the winner. I thought for sure it's got, six, one, two, three, four, five, six quad size 4 guns. Like that's an insane amount of DPS. You've got 2 size 3 shields. I thought there's no way. Well, yes way. The A2 absolutely kicks the pants off of the Hammerhead. It kicks the pants off of it.
All right. So I'm making this video, and I don't normally do this, but I feel like maybe I need to just once. Because every time I mention the A2, I have people that come to the comments and tell me that it's a terrible buy, it's a terrible ship, it's terrible at A, B, C, D, E, F. Which I understand that it's a $750 ship. I understand that it is not a great value as far as what you get out of its capability and what you can do in the game. So, and I've said that multiple times, even though the A2 is one of my favorite ships. But let's not act like the ship is useless. And that's what I think a lot of people act like every time I mention the A2, a lot of people act like the ship is just useless. It can carry multiple vehicles. It has a massive amount of turrets. It has really good pilot firepower, and it can drop bombs like literally no other ship can in the game. So unless you like spamming missiles, which it can't do because it drops bombs instead of shooting missiles, it really is a 3-role ship. It can shoot other ships. It can defend other ships with those turrets as long as they're, where they're pointed where they're supposed to be. And it can carry vehicles, not to mention 200 plus SCU of cargo. So I think I'm so glad that Avenger 1, that's Avenger 1, go, like, subscribe, and all that stuff to his channel. He's widely considered to be one of the foremost voices on Star Citizen combat. So I'm so glad that he put this ship in the S tier as far as combat. Now, as he goes on to say in the video, most fighters are going to, multiple fighters can take down pretty much any of these ships. But for the A2 to be at the top of his list, I think is a validation. Not that I need validation. I think the facts are the facts. Like they don't really care about how you feel. The facts are just what they are. The A2 is an excellent ship, and you don't have to like the A2 for it to be an excellent ship. You don't have to think the A2 is a great value for it to be an excellent ship. You don't have to believe those things for it to still be an excellent ship. Now, he's only validating the ship in the combat aspect, but I think that's the primary thing that most people challenge me on, is how useful it is in combat, because when they think of only being able to drop bombs in atmosphere, they think, well, that's the only part of the ship that matters, and it really isn't. People forget that what I think is the most important aspect of this ship is that it has so many turrets. It has 7 turrets. 7 turrets plus pilot controlled weapons, which means it can, as long, and here, I'll just play this other clip.
Because what happens is if the pilot in the A2 is relatively competent enough to keep the enemy Hammerhead or any multi-crew ship that's engaging lower than the horizon line. So if you were to imagine looking in the cockpit, you have your crosshair for the nose of your ship. It has those 4 little dots, 2 horizontal, or 2 vertical, 2 horizontal. If you were to draw a line in that horizontal plane, anything on that line or below is what your turrets can hit. Anything on that line or above, your turrets can't get up. So what happens is, if you always position your A2 so it's just shooting down onto the target, you have 2 size 5 gimbal turrets plus a whole whack of other size 4 turrets, the amount of firepower that comes out of the A2 is absolutely ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And you've got 2 size 3 shields. So you've got a ton of shields. And again, the disparity between size 5 and size 4 guns is very noticeable.
Like he said, as long as you keep the ships above or below that horizon line, you can put those turrets on any target and take those targets out. So like combat wise, the ship is awesome if you have a pilot that knows how to use it. If you don't have a pilot that doesn't know how to use a ship, it doesn't matter what ship you're in, you're probably going to lose. So yeah, people overly focus on the bombing aspect of what it can do with the bombs, and they forget that it has 7 turrets. And 7 turrets is going to be a bad time for anybody. And another thing that a lot of people don't think about with this ship is you can change, like, people sometimes won't know you're in an A2. Like, if you look at this ship from the top down, you can't tell that a person's in an A2 if they change their skin. So there's so many times where you can be flying in an A2 and people won't even know that you're flying in A2. People will think, oh, that might be a M2, or they might think it's a C2. Because A2s are, they're I don't know how common they are, but like in general, they're not that common. And I think they'll be even less common now because the price going up. I think it's like 44 million in game now, where I think it used to be like in the 20s. So it's almost twice the price. People will still buy it, of course, but it's almost twice the price. And I think when people think about that, they're like, oh, well, you know, that's a lot of turrets, but I'll just go get a hammerhead. What did Avengers say in the video? It outdoes the hammerhead. It outdoes the hammerhead. The hammerhead is literally built to just have turrets. Quad size 4 turrets. But the size 5s are just better. The size 5s are just better. So they're just better turrets. They do more damage. And again, the redundancy of the A2. The, you know, dual shields, dual power plants, dual coolers, dual missile racks, even for the bombs that it drops. Like, you can destroy one missile rack, it still has 2 size 10 bombs to drop, right? So yes, we can, I mean, in the long range nature of the Hercules and stuff, like, that's not specific to the A2, but people forget, like, these things don't happen in a vacuum, right? Like, these ships aren't in a vacuum where like only one part of the ship matters, right? Like, this ship can do a lot of things when you take it out of the part where you're just trying to, you know, crap on it because it's too expensive, right? So yes, I understand that. I'm not trying to convince people to buy the A2. I don't think people are going to just hop out and buy the A2 because I'm making this video. That's not the point of it. The point of it is to say, you can say that the ship is too expensive. You can say that the ship, you don't like the ship. You can say that the ship isn't a great value. And those might be valid points, but what you can't say is that the A2 is a crappy ship. Because it's one of the best as far as multi-crew combat. It's got great multi-role gameplay. It has multiple ways where you can do multi-role gameplay in this ship. It has redundancy for almost every part. I think the only part that doesn't have redundancy is the quantum drive. Which I don't even think you can have multiple quantum drives in a ship. As far as CIG is done, I don't think any ship has multiple quantum drives. It has the ability to be flown solo, meaning you don't even have to bring people with you, and this ship is still useful because it has 2 size 5s from control from the pilot, and it can still drop bombs from the pilot. The pilot can drop the bombs. Not to mention pilot can load their own cargo, pilot can load their own vehicles, so on and so forth. You put a NERSA on this thing and it becomes like, what other ship can do the things that this can do when you just add a NERSA? The Idris, the Polaris, the Perseus, maybe? The Javelin? You got 5 ships that can do what this ship can do when you put an Ursa on it. 5. The Corsair, the Corsair, the only reason the Corsair is better is because you can solo the Corsair. Well, the Corsair is better as far as like shooting forward. But if your target's not in front of you and you have to spin that thing just to get those guns on target, it's a little bit harder than getting multiple manned turrets on target. But it's also harder to get those turrets manned in the first place, right? You have to find 7 people to get into those turrets. So I get that part. I get that part being difficult. But folks, let's stop acting like the A2 is a bad ship. It's an expensive ship. Expensive does not equal bad. And maybe in your book it does, but expensive by itself does not equal bad. Expensive ships can be useful ships. Do I suggest anybody go out and buy an A2? No, I wouldn't even tell people at this point in Star Citizen to go out and purchase anything that's above $400. I don't think I'm telling anybody that's coming to this game. I brought, not just people who've used my code, but I brought, at least outside of the people who've used my code, I brought at least 10 people to this game. So did I tell them to go out and buy an A2? It's my favorite ship. Did I do it? I mean, well, it is maybe until the Banu Merchantman comes out. We'll see if that ever comes out. But I didn't tell them to go out and buy these super expensive ships. I told them to get a starter pack. And then the people who wanted to spend more, I didn't convince them to spend more. They wanted to spend more. I told them the ships that I would suggest, right? I had one person, they started with they joined during the Overdrive initiative. They were able to finish it outside of me. And they bought an F7A, and that's their ship. And that's the one that they bought an F7C and upgraded to an F7A, and that's going to be their ship. $175 spent in game. Another person, they have a C2, and the most expensive ship I've seen somebody purchase in game, as in people that I've brought to the game, somebody that I know bought the Ironclad Assault. They didn't start with that, but they saw my video on the Assault and how I thought it was going to be a pretty amazing ship, and then they bought that ship. But they had an Aurora when they went from an Aurora to an Ironclad Assault. So, but that was them, right? They spent $500 and something on the game, and I didn't even convince them to do that. I just told them that, I just made the video. So I'm not telling people to come in the game and buy the A2. What I'm telling people is the A2 is a great ship if you're going to buy one. Not that you should. I shouldn't have even bought one. I'm not even 100% certain. I'll have a lot of uses for it, but I'm going to do it. Matter of fact, the last time I flew it, I crashed it because I'm trying to still learn how to use these sticks. And I crashed it because I turned the throttle down too low and I couldn't figure it out before we hit the water. So I'm still learning how to fly the friggin' thing with these sticks. Like, I could fly it with mouse and keyboard, but I'm still learning how to fly it. But yeah, I don't know. I think, I have to be an A2 defender because there's so many A2 haters out there. Just get the M2, just get the C2. No, and no. The C2 is not an A2. It just isn't. The C2 is for moving a bunch of vehicles or a bunch of cargo, mostly a bunch of vehicles. The A2 is to fight. You can fight with this thing if it's fully crewed. Not even fully crewed. You really just, if you have all the size 5s crewed, and there's 4 size 5s. If you have the size 5s crewed which I think there's 4 of those. Yeah, there's 4. So if there's 4 size 5s, you get all 4 size 5s crewed, everything you shoot at is gonna melt. It's just gonna melt. The M2 is not the A2. It has 1 extra turret. It has 1 more extra turret than the C2. The M2 has 1 more extra turret than the C2, and 6 less turrets. 6 less turrets than the A2. So it's not the same. It's not the same. That the M2 and the A2 are a mile apart. They're a mile apart. And I think that's what most people's arguments are. Well, just get the M2. The M2 is not the A2. It just isn't. And that's not to say the M2 is some crappy ship. It's just to say that if that's your argument, it's a very weak argument. So yeah, I'm glad that Avenger 1 made the video. And my ship is S tier. I'm glad to see another YouTuber say it. Well, I don't want to just call him a YouTuber. I don't know what other, just call him a content creator. Just glad another content creator who plays Star Citizen recognized like the value of these turrets that I think a lot of people, they say are useless because they're all at the bottom of the ship. That doesn't matter. If you've flown in that Idris, you know that doesn't matter. Your pilot is still going to have to get the turrets where they're supposed to be aimed at. Regardless of what ship you're flying, if you have turret gunners, your pilot has to get those guns on target. And that was true in the Idris. So if it's true on the Idris, and we had our pilot, I have the video up, our pilot had to maneuver so that we could get our guns on target. Guess what? If you're in an A2, you got to maneuver to get your guns on target. There's no difference. There's no difference. Well, there's a small difference. If you have guns on all sides, you have to do less maneuvering. But you're always going to have more guns on one side than the other. You're always going to be able to put more guns on a certain amount of guns on a target that are higher if you're facing one way than if you're facing another. For instance, let's say you have guns on the top of the ship and then the top rear of the ship. And then you have guns on one gun on the bottom and 2 guns and 1 gun on each side. The top of the ship is where you want most of your firepower to come from because you have 2 turrets on the top, right? So if you have 2 turrets on the top, you're going to want the top of your ship to face the opponent more than the sides or the bottom or even the front if there's no weapons or whatever the case is, right? So I'm just saying, if you have to do it, you have to do that on every ship unless there's only 1 turret on every single side and they're all the exact same firepower, which then I'm going to say either way, you're still going to have to aim it a certain way to try to get at least 2 of those guns on the target. So again, the A2, I'm not telling people to go out and spend $750 on an A2. In fact, I think most people should not buy an A2. I think the A2 is for people who specifically want what it can do. Do you want something that can drop size 10 bombs? This is the only thing so far that can do that. Do you want a ship with a ton of turrets for when you're ready for multi-role gameplay? This has a ton of turrets, and especially if you're not looking at a hammerhead, if the hammerhead doesn't interest you, this ship has a ton of turrets. You want a drop ship? This thing has all those seats for the turret gunners that they don't have to be in those turrets. They're remote turrets. They can just sit in those seats. Not to mention, you can load vehicles on and they could just sit and you could load, I think it fits 2 Spartans. You could put 2 Spartans on here. They could just sit in the Spartans and wait and then just jump off of the Spartans. I mean, that's what it's for. Do you want a ship that can do all the way up to HRTs? I mean, I've been able to do ERTs, but I won't say everybody can do it. So let's say VHRTs. I think pretty much anybody can do VHRTs in this solo. 2 size 5s, I think most people can do VHRTs in this solo. with the amount of like I think it has like 112,000 HP and 2 size 3 shields. Most people can do VHRT solo in this. So those are the people who might consider this ship, right? But I would even say if you only want to do one of those things outside of the bomb dropping, if you only want to do the size 10 bomb dropping, then you have to get an A2 because it's the only ship that can do it. But outside of that, if you only want to do one of those things, I still wouldn't suggest getting the A2. If you just want those size 5s, you can get the C2 or the M2. If you just want the turrets, you can go and get the Hammerhead. If you just want to be able to carry the vehicles, again, C2, M2. So if it doesn't, the A2 doesn't even come into like I suggest it until you tell me you only want to drop size 10 bombs, which I have yet to meet anybody who only wants to do that. So unless you want 2 of those things, I'm probably not going to suggest the A2, and not even any of the 2, right? So if you want just the size 5 weapons and the ability to take vehicles with you, again, you can get the C2 or the M2. But if you want any other combination of 2, then that's when I start to suggest the A2. And I have yet to suggest the A2 to anyone. I haven't met anybody else that wanted to do those things and couldn't find another ship that could do those things. Like I haven't met anybody who wanted a bunch of turrets and was like, I'm going to get the A2 instead of the Hammerhead. I think they should. I think that's becoming the mainstream idea. I think it will at least become the mainstream idea now that Avenger 1's done a video about it. But I think they should, but I haven't had anybody come to me yet. I haven't convinced anybody to buy an A2. So if the idea is, if you think I'm just trying to convince people to go out and buy A2s, I would prefer to be one of the few people with the A2, to be completely honest with you. But most people I think that I've met, they buy the A2 in game. They bought it in game. They have no intent of purchasing it outside of the game. And I think that's a pretty solid way to go about it. I bought the A2 outside of the game because it's one of my favorite ships. And it's only become a better ship to me as we've went along. And now that I could put an Ursa in it, I don't think I'll be taking a lot of my other larger ships out as much as I thought. So yeah, that's my A2 video where I just kind of wanted to, clear up some things about my opinion on the A2 and the value, in-game value of the A2, not necessarily the monetary value of the A2. So yeah, again, you don't have to take my word for it. Go talk to Avenger 1. Go scream at him. But yep, that's it for this one. I will see you in the next one. Peace.